There's three parts to the scales that we're going to add. The first part is this lateral line. And then the second part is a diagonal mark this way. And then the third part is a diagonal mark the other way. So there's three parts to it. Now we're going to need a few things. A small pair of scissors. One thing I do is I make myself a little cardboard ruler, and I'm going to put them across like this, and that way this cardboard does not scratch the very soft aluminum. Now another thing I had to make, I took this Ofla razor knife and I made it not so much a razor. This end here has been rounded. So when I'm scribing, I'm pushing down on the aluminum, but I'm not cutting it. So you'll need that. And you're going to need some thin masking tape. This is for marking the lateral line. Okay, so let's start. So we pull off enough tape to go the entire length, plus a little bit. And you run it down the side of the lure with a little bit of a curve to it, and we're going to be marking this side right here. So then I make sure it's pushed down as good as it's going to get. Now I take my razor knife that's been derazored and put it beside the tape, and with one firm motion there. Now as I take this off, you can see that lateral line. One thing to be careful of, don't go over the side fin and don't go over the gills. Now comes the real work. So notice that I've marked the straight edge. When you cut, I keep all my birthday cards and my Christmas cards because the cardboard can be really great for this kind of work. So I've cut it off the card. This side will be not as straight, so you want to mark the card that's the edge that's straight on both sides. So I'm going to choose an angle here that looks right to me, and then I'm going to measure with the protractor here and tell you what it is. So again, don't go over the side fin. So there you go. You can see the very first edge of the scales. So now I'm going to measure this. It's been a while since I've done something like this. So that turns out to be about 65 degrees off level. So if this is level, 65 degrees this way is what this angle is. Now, I never used this. I've done enough of these. I mark the first one, make it look right, and then I just do it. So now, I always put the cardboard on the side where I can see the last line that I've drawn. That way I know the width of it, and I just start doing this. Now, there's going to be some variability when it's all done. You'll have little diamond-shaped scales of a variety of different sizes, which is fine. Bear in mind you're working on a three-dimensional figure here, which is this lure. Now once we get closer to the gills, we're going to have to make sure we don't accidentally run over top of the gills. I consider this first diagonal easy. And the reason I say that is the second diagonal you've got to be a little bit more accurate, and I'll show you why when I get there, because I'm going to use that lateral line to help make my scales look better. Okay, so there's one side completed. Now, here comes the challenge. So, we did this version, and now we've got to do this other side. And we're going to use the same angle. So here's the trick. You see where these angles cross the lateral line? You want to put the next angle right on top of that where there's that joint. That's really the tough part. So I'm going to do this one. So if you look at that, this one is bang on. So the next one will be over here, and over here, and over here. And what that does is it puts a very even set of scales right along the lateral line. Now, on either side of those, as you move along, your scales may change shape slightly. But you're starting out with a row of very, very nice scales, and that's a very good way to start these lures. And then the rest of the scales will look well. Sometimes the scales lay down a little bit, sometimes they stand up a little bit, but it's not meant to be rocket science. It's just meant to do as good a job as you. So this side of the lure is done now, and you notice the side fin is done. I actually tried to catch that on the camera, and of course my clever little Canon camera shut down because of lack of battery. It's very annoying. It does it so silently, and all of a sudden you look up and there it is, shut off, and you don't know where you've left it. So anyway, I have another fin on the other side, which I'm going to look at right away, but I thought I would look a little bit, or show you a little bit, how the bottom of the lure was finished. And you notice that the two sides of the foil come together in a nice straight line. They actually go underneath this belly loop, and they make a real nice junction here. And one of the things we'll be doing in just a little while is we'll be putting our first coat of epoxy on this lure, and any little marks or bumps that are left in this will be covered by epoxy, and then we're going to do a little bit of sanding. The same goes for this edge. Greg Buds, who I've been using for help for my lures, is very good at making very, very good work. And one of the things that happens is, if you were to start painting this right now, this would be dark, and most often you may not notice where the aluminum joins the back of the lure. However, once it's painted, you'll put a coat of epoxy on it, and then you'll get glimmers of that edge. Now, because the epoxy is filled in the edge, you may not feel it, but you can see it from time to time. So, one thing that I'm going to do on this lure, this will be my second or third time I've tried this, is I'm going to put a layer of epoxy on this lure before I do any color. Now, Greg puts a layer of 2K, he calls it, and which is a clear automotive cover. I can't get a good 2K. Everything that I get is not acrylic, and it has horrible outgassing of noxious stuff. So I'm going to try and use my epoxy as best. So after the first coat of epoxy, that's when the color is going to start to go on. So I want to show you how I do this fin. Let me show you how I did this side. Now, this fin is not meant to be perfect. It's not meant to, come off a factory line. And however, there are ways to make it look pretty good, and that's really what I'm shooting for. To be best, in my opinion, it should be pretty good, but not perfect, because you don't see perfect things in fishes. So what I do here, I use my little pen here and I mark halfway. Now this is ink that comes off, and then I divide it again, and then I divide it again. Now, what I'm trying to accomplish with these marks is I want to put lines down there that will guide my hand-free lines. So I've been doing it kind of like this. I've cut another side fin, and remember I told you I didn't like it and I had to trim it, so I've trimmed this one. And normally I would do something like this. Now, because that thick cardboard rocks back and forth, it's hard to do, and you'll get lines that kind of take off on you. So what I did is I took a piece of my birthday card and I scribed the fin on it with the idea I'm going to make my first mark in the center here, the center there. Now I can tell already that I can hold this one. This one is quite steady. So I'm going to make sure I line up with the mark, and I'm going to put a line. Okay, so that first line looks perfect. This contour matches this contour, which is perfect. So now, let's see about the next line. And notice I'm using this as a guide to get the angle kind of right, and I'm kind of picking it up underneath my fingertips, and it wants to squirm away. And let's see if I can get that steady enough to actually do this. And the answer is, yeah, I think I can. Okay, so now I've got two lines. I'm going to turn the hook around. I always want to operate on this side. Now we're getting a little tougher. So I have it down pretty good. Sorry if my fingers are in the way. Alright, slipped a little bit at the end. Not that big a deal. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and put in more lines between these lines. But these are going to be by hand. And they're going to be a little wobbly, but they're going to make it just imperfect enough that, in my opinion, it's going to look better. And anywhere you see a gap, slip in a line. Around and do the other way. Actually, you know what? I think I like it this way. Now, maybe I can do one more line here. Oh, that turned out good. Greg does this all by hand, and I really don't quite understand how we can do that. Okay, so there's that side pin. Is it perfect? No. Is it pretty good? Yeah, actually it's not too bad. So I'm going to finish this, the scales on this side, off camera. You've seen it before, so it's not new to you. I still have to figure out how to fill in this gap. This is actually quite a big divot, and I've never had one like that before. So I think what I'll do is I'll just put in a very, very tiny layer of filler, come back and very, very lightly sand it off, and then I'll probably put one layer of white oil-based paint on it, just so it has the same kind of shine as the other ones. It might even be two layers. So this is the lure we've been working on. You can tell by the double patch here. I've got another. This is a 6-inch. I've got another 6-inch with a single patch, which I may have showed earlier. I've also got two 5-inch lures. Both of these have the single patch. This actually is one that I bought from Greg Budd, and I always like to have a lure of the ones that I'm trying to mimic and copy. I don't sell them. I don't make money, so I don't have any copyright issues with anybody. And besides, Greg is a great guy to talk to. He's got lots of information that he's willing to share. So right now he would be putting on a 2K coating. Now this is a automotive clear coat. I can't get this right now. I'm in Alberta, Canada, and all I can get is a clear coat coating that is not acrylic, and it's horribly smelly. So I'm getting ready to put a coat of epoxy on here, and the reason I'm going to do that is to cover up these edges. So we're gonna show you here just in a second something called a spinner. And what I do is I clamp this end to a spinner, and it spins it around. It's actually a rotisserie for a barbecue, and it looks kind of awful. It's made of plywood. It's certainly not pretty, but I have completed hundreds of lures on this thing, and every once in a while it squeals and groans and complains, and yet it just keeps going. So these lures will be on there for probably 14-15 hours until the epoxy hardens, and then I'll remove them and hang them up. One of the important things you have to do before you do that, though, is you've got to wash these and get the oil off your skin off them. So once you do that, coming up here, I'm going to just take it over to the sink and put a little bit of warmish water with a touch of soap in there and wash it off by hand, and then I'm going to dry them for overnight to make sure there's no water. And from that point forward, we're kind of in a clean room environment. You don't put your fingers on these. You handle them by the stainless steel loops, the front loop, the belly loop, and the tail loop. But My object is not to copy Greg's lures, it's not to copy that, but it's to make a facsimile of it that shows the techniques. And of course, one of the things I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to put these eyes in. Now here's a bit of a dilemma. Normally, the way I've always done it is I would paint the lure, glue the eyes in, and then put the first coat on. And then that way, you never have to worry about getting paint on the eyes. Putting this first coat on, this is very much of a change for me. So I'm going to glue the eyes in, put the first coat on, and then I'm going to have to cover up the eyes so I can spray them. And this is a little bit different, but it's really going to help me get rid of this edge. Now, most of my lures that I've done in the past, somewhere along here you can see this edge. You can't feel it because the epoxy has filled in that little gap, but you can see it. And when you're spraying with your airbrush, sometimes the paint doesn't get in along that little edge, no matter how hard you try. So the idea about painting the back of this lure after it's had its first coat of epoxy means that this edge will be already molded in, and I'll actually be taking some 1000 grit sandpaper along here to make sure that that edge is perfect and you can't feel it. So I'm going to show a picture of a little movie of a spinner in operation. It just I just got a bunch of lures on there that I threw on there just to give you an idea of what this spinner does. I'm sure most of you have your own spinners. There's a variety of ways to make these spinners. My spinner, I need 2 of every lure to use it. So I'm going to be able to actually coat 4 lures at once. And you need one on each side of this spinner. So it balances just like a car tire. So I'm going to show that right now. So here's a view of the spinner. I've got this red hook over here, opposite another hook that's kind of blue and is roughly the same weight. And then I've got these 2 lures that are pretty much the same weight. You can see the barbecue rotisserie motor on there, and so what you'll do is you'll put that red lure straight up, for example, and then you will paint it, and then you'll give it a couple spins just to move the epoxy around, and then you'll do the next lure and the next lure and the next lure. So let's take a look at this, what it looks like when it's moving. It may, sometimes it screeches, sometimes it doesn't. Let's find out what it does. Okay, so there's what's going on. It's probably one of the more boring things you can watch making lures. I will typically get a batch of lures with epoxy on them, 8, 9, 10 in the evening, and throughout the evening I will, the rest of the evening I will check on them from time to time, and then I'll go to sleep. And I'll come up in the morning and I'll check them, see if they're dried or not. Usually they take a little bit longer. They'll go to maybe the next noon, so that's probably about 18 hours. This time it's being good and it's not making too much noise, so this is a bit of a different view of the spinner, showing the whole box, and it's not very expensive. Works very well. Total cost under $100.